Okay, so yeah, another sort of tosai selection video today. Probably not the most fascinating from a visual perspective, but we're actually looking at tosai asagi from Oya Koi Farm. Now, I think, from all the experience I've had in the industry, this is one where I still see so many koi keepers trip up on when they're actually coming to selecting asagi to raise, to grow on, whatever you want to do. And I think it just comes from a misunderstanding about what they are, where they've come from, and what to actually look for in younger examples. So yeah, Oya is one of the most desirable lineages for asagi. My personal preference between Oya and Otsuka, we've got the best two in the world by far. We've got some amazing characteristics and they just produce stunning results. So these fish are currently sitting at, we'll just have a quick measure, 12 to 14 centimetres on average. The size is pretty consistent across the whole batch, although there is a few looking a bit smaller. Yeah, Oya, I've been raising these now for a few years. Never really had a pond set aside to fully dedicate to these. However, this year I've decided that is what I'm going to do. Managed to get my hands on them really early, which I'm quite excited about. The pond that they're in currently is about 1,200 gallons. There's 500 pieces in there at the moment, all of a similar size, approximately about 4 to 5 months old, so very young, not showing too many asagi characteristics at the moment. And yeah, I'm excited to see what we can do with these. They do grow exceptionally well. That's a characteristic of the bloodline, but not just the bloodline, it's actually a characteristic of the variety itself. I think it's important amongst things in selection to know variety specific traits because not every body type is specific to a bloodline. Asagi have a particular type of body which is very different to that of Showa, for example. Asagi typically tend to have a more slender kind of frame, especially when they're younger, and even when they're bigger, to be honest with you. You never get the real power in the body like you would with a Showa, for example. So that is important to know, especially when you're selecting through and looking for examples to grow on. What's also important to know with these, I think, Asagi is the heritage. Now, when we look at the sort of family tree of koi, if you like, Asagi were the first evolution from the magoi, the plain black carp. That's important to know for a development perspective, because being the next mutation from magoi means that generally there is quite a lot of black within the fish. When we actually look at them closer in a moment, it's not something you'll particularly see. You'll see more white, blue, and tones of grey. But it's important to remember that magoi, there's a lot of magoi blood carrying in these fish. That's what creates the body line that you see. And it's also to know from a development perspective that black is sat there in the skin and it's going to want to push its way up to the surface at some point. Another interesting thing to note is asagi are actually one of the few fish, if not the only, can't remember off the top of my head, where the beni, the red, actually develops later in life or progresses through as the fish matures. Most varieties that have red of some description will typically only lose it at some point in their life, whereas asagi, it's coming up year on year until it eventually comes to the sort of full red belly line that we like to see. So that brings me on to sort of selection criteria for these, and I think the bit where most people go wrong. It's crucial to know that they're increasing from the minute of spawning, they're darkening all the time, they're darkening. So when they're this kind of age, it's important to get the really light examples, because as they become 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old, that black's just going to keep pushing through from deep in the skin and darkening the fish. So if you start with something that's too dark, too finished, too early, by the time it's 2, 3, 4, that black's going to dominate and probably ruin the fish completely. When it comes to the beni, and this is something, again, a lot of people reject the fish over, that's not going to be there at this stage in their life, and I'm not particularly looking for it. When I say that, I'm not looking for the full red belly line that people like to see. With Oya Asagi in particular and Otsuka, from my experience, all I'm looking for in the young examples when I do select is a tiny piece of Benny, whether it be on the head, on the fin, or on the lateral, below the lateral line. Even if it's just one scale, one tiny spot, that's enough to tell me that it's there and it's going to come with age. The bit with these being so young is that it's possibly not even going to be showing that much yet at this age. So yeah, when it comes to the first selection, I'm not expecting to really see Benny on fish where it probably will be in one form or another. So primarily what I'll be looking for at the first selection is bone structure alone. Fish that are too dark, I will reject, and if the bone structure is not strong enough, we'll reject those as well, and just focus on that, because size is going to be important with these. So yeah, in a nutshell, the lighter the better, and don't worry about the Benny when they're young. You know, it can be sort of, at Nisai at 2 years old, you want to be seeing more signs of the Benny coming. I raised a batch of these this year as well, which are now Nisai, and progressively throughout the summer, certainly towards the end of the growing season, I'm seeing more and more of it. Over winter, I'll see more of it as well. One thing I love about the Oya Asagi is the Benny that they develop is just superb. When you actually see it in full glory, it is so luminous and deep red. It really offsets well against the blue background. Obviously, as they mature, we're going to be looking at the fuca in between the scales as being an important factor. Right now, that's not even there to see, so it's nothing to be concerned about. So yeah, let's take a closer look at what's in here, and yeah, see if you like what you see. Videos that we've looked at already, the size aspect is there. We looked at the Shinoda Hiotsuri, the Marseille Chagoi and the Hoshkin Showa so far. We'll pop links to all those videos in the description below. But yeah, at this age, size grading very important. There's a nice consistency to this batch overall, so we will see there's a few smaller ones where the bone structure's set a bit smaller. They're not likely to compete, especially with 500 fish in 1,200 gallons of water. It's going to be quite ferocious. So at the first grading, we'll look to take away those fish. What we can see if we take a closer look, we can see quite a few different sort of shades of coloration already. Some of the fish even looking like the Yuki Asagi, which is quite desirable, where they're almost completely white. What we can see, if we can get that on the camera, however, is we've got the dark patch across the dorsal, and we can see the Sumi progression starting to come along the dorsal line as well. So it is only a matter of time before the Asagi sort of Mitsuba pattern, if you like, with the fukurin starts to come along as the Sumi pushes that upwards more. We can then also see we've got some that are progressing a bit faster. So in fact, that one there is a better example. A lot darker in coloration already, which isn't a big problem. It's just progressing at a different rate. However, you know, it's likely that is going to be a lot darker, you know, 2 months, a month, 2 months down the line. So that one there as well, I should possibly say, is going to be a fish that probably won't make it, be a bit too dark. I will be focusing more towards the substantially lighter ones. You can see there that the Asagi, it's there in the skin, it's just a matter of time. There's a couple of examples showing some Benny already. This one you can actually see on the cheek, just on the side of the body as well, and on the fins. That's quite an early progression. When we're actually looking here overall, we've got another one there, but there's only a handful of fish that are showing any Benny at the minute. And just to reiterate, that's not something I'm concerned about. I know it's going to come, it's just going to take a bit of time. So we can see with that one there, it's sort of sat in the fins a little bit. So yeah, excited about these. They will grow considerably quickly. That's a nice thing with Asagi, that heritage being very close to the Magoi, growing something they don't struggle with. They've got quite a weird feeding behaviour in general, can be quite scatty, which is normal, but in the greenhouses where we are, the feeding's sort of uninterrupted anyway, so that's not going to be a big problem. And yeah, in a nutshell, this is young Asagi. I think you're going to love to see the progression of these through to Nisai in October next year. So now we've had a closer look at those. Going to go back in the pond. These are going to go initially on a growth diet, so just to start bulking them up. Won't worry anything too much about colour or anything like that at the moment. The pond being 1200 gallon, these are going to go on a feeding regime every 3 hours initially. That's mainly the limitation of the auto feeder, but also the type of pond it is. We don't want to be putting it in there too quickly. Yeah, water temperature, it's going to vary between 22 and 24 degrees. They're sat about 22 at the minute. That'll get upped in a few days' time. And yeah, let's see where they end up. The next selection is going to be in about 4, maybe 5 weeks' time. By that point, the pond's going to be looking really full because they will have packed a bit of size on, and we'll see where they're at from then. If you've enjoyed watching, please hit the subscribe button below. You'll get a notification anytime there's any new content, and yeah, you'll get an update on this particular fish every time we do a selection, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, we'll be back soon.